Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay in the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
The Black and Gold Banneret podcast is brought to you by the Sam Unger Real Estate Team, powered by eXp Realty. Proudly serving Orange, Seminole, and Lake counties. Call 407-790-9957 or visit samsellsorlando.net. What's up, Knight fans? Happy Championship Week. Jeff Sharon with you here on the Black and Gold Banneret podcast. We got a full house with you for this show. We got Eric Lopez. We got Brian Murphy. We got all kinds of football talk for you on what is the busiest news week of the year so far in UCF athletics. We're all exhausted from this news. It just won't end. We're recording this on
I know,
Wednesday.
Brian Murphy, set the record straight right now. Do you have a deal with Nightline right now? Come clean.
I can neither confirm nor deny my allegiance.
All right, this is me officially questioning your loyalty.
Oh, get out of here. I'm going to throw you out of here.
You can't throw me out of my own podcast.
Is this because Nightline has better facilities in their studios there that Jeff's been to? Their what's it called? The Nightline studios there. Is that what this is about? It's about facilities.
No, it's because his parents live next door to Andrew Fegley.
Well, that's true. That's true.
All right. Well, all right. In all seriousness, though, we're gonna get to football talk, like actual on-field football talk here in this show in a little while. We'll recap the unbelievable game that was between UCF and USF in the season finale. War on I-4, just living up to all of its billing. We'll get to previewing the conference championship game against Memphis, the Knights and the Tigers hooking up for a second time this year at Spectrum Stadium. And we will get to and we'll also get to a bunch of other things. Volleyball season wraps up with another 20-win campaign. They got into the postseason. We'll kind of give you some of the details on that and lots more. Don't forget, you can hit us up at blackandgoldbanneret.com. Follow us on Facebook as well, facebook.com/blackandgoldbanneret. Follow us on Twitter at UCF_Banneret. Follow me at Jeff_Sharon. Follow Eric at Eric Lopez Elo. Follow Brian at Spokes_Murphy. And you can subscribe to our podcast on Google Play, iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and TuneIn. All right, boys, let's get down to business. The rumor mill has just been churning at a feverish pace, such that I think the wheel is about to break off and go down the river. Scott Frost, it seems, is about to coach his final game at UCF. I say it seems because obviously nothing has been confirmed yet. There are reports all over the place that he really is torn, but obviously Florida. He over the weekend after the USF game, he called up Florida, said no, thank you. Nebraska, the other domino fell when Nebraska fired Mike Riley, which was pretty much expected. And in Frost's press conference on Monday, well, I'll leave this to you guys too, because unfortunately I couldn't make it because I was working, but you guys were there. It was very. My impression from watching it afterwards was it was very lawyerly, right? Don't say anything that can get you into trouble. Just play it right down the middle, and that's exactly what he did because Scott Frost apparently listened when he went to media training. But we're feeling the tide turn such that as we get toward the second half of the week with the American Athletic Conference Championship game against Memphis approaching, that his days at UCF may indeed be numbered. So I'll leave this to you guys. What was really the impression that you got?
Well, I mean, I kind of disagree with you a little bit, Jeff, because I got the impression of a coach who probably could have said a lot less than he did. I mean, he knew the questions were going to be there about Nebraska and the coaching rumors. And so when he was served him up, he could have said, I'm not going to address him. I'm not going to do anything. And he did that on the teleconference earlier in the day because I'm not going to talk about it. And he passed it over. But as we kept asking him about it on the press conference on Monday, he did give us a little answers here and there that were interesting. I mean, the one about I forget who asked it. I think it was Andrea Adelson who asked, what do you think about the AD of Nebraska coming out and saying he's interested in you? Are you interested in Nebraska? And he could have said, I'm not going to talk about that. This is all about Conference Championship Week. But he said, I'd be hurt if Nebraska wasn't interested in me. Now, if you're trying to calm the waters and sort of quell speculation, why would you say something like that? And there were a lot of those sorts of moments in the press conference where it's like, that's an interesting thing for him to say at this moment when he could have just gone, like I said in my article about it, he could have just gone full Belichick. He could have gone full Belichick and said, we're on to Memphis and just cut it off at the pass. And he didn't. And I think that was somewhat telling. And I appreciate the honesty because you don't see that much.
Right.
And I did come away feeling that this is truly a man conflicted, if not over the job he's going to choose. Let's say he already knows he's going to go to Nebraska. He is conflicted because it's really going to be difficult for him to leave these kids here in Orlando.
Yeah, and we actually have that bite right here. Let's go ahead and take a listen to it.
I'd be hurt if Nebraska wasn't interested in me. We're undefeated. I'm from there. When you win, a lot of people are interested in you. That doesn't matter. Like I said, what matters is these players and what they've accomplished, and they deserve the focus to be on them and not me.
Elo, what'd you think about that?
I agree with Murph. I give him credit. Look, coaches, it's funny. Fans are always interesting. There's two of these going on in the state right now. Jimbo Fisher at Florida State. All indications are he's going to go to Texas A&M.
Two?
And he addressed it by, I don't talk jobs. He just deflects all questions.
Right.
And then that's kind of agitating. I thought Scott was very honest, and I think he's always been honest about this whole thing.
That's what I think is hilarious. And this is the and forgive me, Eric, but this is the catch-22 that we in the media and athletes and coaches, we always play. We get frustrated when athletes and coaches don't say anything, right? And we're like, oh, you guys aren't saying anything. I mean, you guys are being, it's like a form of dishonesty that we get that we get upset about. And then when guys actually say something that's refreshingly honest, like Scott Frost saying, hey, I'd actually be a little hurt if Nebraska wasn't interested in me as a coach. Basically meaning I think I'm that good and Nebraska's that special. I mean, he's not saying anything we don't know, right? And he gets kind of raked over the coals a little bit by some of the black and gold, colored glasses wearing people out there. Well, he was honest. Like, what more do you want? It's a catch-22, and it happens all the time, and it drives me crazy.
Well, the thing is, he's in a no-win situation,
right?
Because people I know I've heard people say, well, why doesn't he just come out and say it? Well, what do you want him to say? Okay,
why would
I'm
he
leaving.
do that?
Right. If he says, guys, I'm just going to let you know I'm leaving. This will be my last game. Well, now all of a sudden that just even creates more of like, oh my God, I can't believe he's leaving. People would be upset. Players would be like, now emotionally would be kind of, whoa, what's going on? What do you mean you're leaving?
The players would completely check out.
Well, and that's the thing. You would also have a week where people are trying to convince him to change his mind. So it'd be crazy. It'd be chaos. If he says, "Hey guys, I'm staying," well, what? Okay, but then he could change. Turns out he doesn't. Now he's Nick Saban, right? Nick Saban did the old, I'm staying with the Dolphins, I'm not looking at any college jobs, and then he takes the Alabama job. If he says, guys, I really don't know what I'm going to do, then people are like, oh, my God, what do you mean you don't know what you're going to do? Do you know today? Do you know tomorrow? I mean, it's never going to end. So this is just part of the industry. It's part of the gig. And I think he's been very honest throughout this process, more than other coaches are. And let me ask you both this, and which one of you can maybe take the side, the fan side, because I've got to be honest. I've been laughing the whole week how everybody is in shock about this. And my question is, why is anybody shocked by this? Jeff, I think we even approached this topic in September. I want to say it was either before or after the Maryland game. And it was right around the time when Nebraska lost to Northern Illinois. And I remember you asked me about the Nebraska situation, and you asked me the question on a 1 to 10 scale, how concerned are you? And I'm like 9.5, and you were caught off guard. Like, duh, this is Nebraska.
Yeah.
He's been on record of saying in articles in the past about how it's his dream job. Okay, it's his dream job.
He's a Nebraska kid, born and raised in the state of Nebraska. He lived in college. He lived the dream of every Nebraska kid that grew up in the 80s. He was He went to Nebraska even after the detour at Stanford. Bill Walsh decided to let him out of his scholarship. He went to Nebraska and he won a national championship quarterbacking the Cornhuskers for Tom Osborne. Hundreds or tens of thousands of Nebraska-grown kids dream to do that, and he was one of them, and he actually got to do it. And now this opportunity pops up. He's 42 years old. I mean, I'm going to get in trouble for saying this with UCF fans, but if the job is offered to him, quite frankly, he'd be stupid to not take it.
Yeah, I mean, because this is the thing. Here's the thing. If he wins this game on Saturday, the conference title game, he's done everything he can do here pretty much.
Right.
All right. I mean, yeah, you could duplicate things, but whatever. Nebraska is right now coming off the worst year they've had since in the 50s. And I think if Scott passes on this job, I think a part of him is always going to say, what if? What if because I know some people are like, well, he could get the job when he's older. Well, there's no guarantee of that, number one.
Right.
And then number two, you mentioned Tom Osborne. I think you could correct me here. You could double check for me. I believe Tom Osborne's 80 years old. Do you really? I mean, how much longer is Tom Osborne going to be around?
Yeah, Tom's 80. That's correct.
He's 80 years old. Tom Osborne may not be around. I think there's a part of Scott Frost is like, I know I can turn around this program. I know I can win here. And I want to bring back this program and make Coach Osborne proud. And I want Coach Osborne to see me do it.
Right.
And I think that's a factor in this. I've called this from a mile away. I'm not surprised at all. I'm shocked that people are shocked by this. And I'm shocked that people don't understand this. Because I don't think this is about money. I don't think this is bigger than football. I think this is a guy that's genuine, because if it was about money, he would have interviewed with Florida. He probably could wait for Florida State.
Well, I think the difference, though, is the UCF fans out there who it feels like, I don't know how you guys feel about this, but it feels like there's a certain faction of UCF fans that are starting to turn on Scott Frost, even though, first of all, look at what he's done for this program in 2 years. He's completely changed the culture of UCF football for the better. And this is, let's face it, this is uncharted territory for UCF fans, even though, like I mentioned on Twitter earlier this week, there was at least one time when we had to kind of deal with these questions of will he leave with George O'Leary, right? Mm-hmm. It was around 07, 08. Syracuse was sniffing around after the Greg Robinson disaster, and I have it on pretty good authority that that they did call him up, and because remember he actually coached up there. He coached for Syracuse. He was an assistant. He was a high school coach in the Syracuse area. And they asked him, Coach, what do you think? And O'Leary turned him down and actually told him instead. And this was after he signed the big extension too. And they said, let's first of all, no, thank you. And the guy who you should call is Doug Marrone. And Doug Marrone became the head coach at Syracuse, former player for O'Leary. And Marrone actually had people forget this, but Marrone actually had a very successful career as the head coach at Syracuse. Kind of got them back into the bowl conversation once again. But I don't think it's very fair for the fans to turn on Scott Frost, considering how much he's done in such a short amount of time. I understand that it feels like it got so hot and heavy there so quickly, and now all of a sudden it feels like he's going to go, and it feels like, oh man, are we going back to square one? But the fact remains is we're not going back to square one. That the culture has been changed, and the culture is bigger than one guy, than one coach, or even a few coaches, depending on who, if he leaves, whoever decides to go with him. I don't know. What do you think about it, Murphy? I get it, but I don't get it.
I'm going to hold off on saying the culture has been changed irrevocably and can never go back, because if that was true, 2013 wouldn't have become 2015 2 years later. And it happens a lot with a lot of programs. And I'll also say this, as I continue to be the bearer of bad news, it's not just Scott Frost who could and probably will leave. He's tied with his assistants. We know that apparently Troy Walters either is getting some interest or is interested in possibly a head coaching job at Rice. That's a rumor out there. Mm-hmm. But you could definitely see some of his assistant coaches leave with him or take other jobs for other positions. And then you also have to ask, which of these players maybe transfers out? Because, again, Mackenzie Milton wanted to be Marcus Mariota. And so when Frost goes to UCF, he goes to UCF because Frost mentored Mariota. Does that change Milton's mindset now that Frost leaves? Adrian Killen said he committed here because he knew this would be an Oregon-style offense, and that fits what he does. Otis Anderson said he grew up watching Stewart and LaMichael James, and guess who they are? They're running backs from Oregon. So they obviously have a very close connection with Scott Frost. A lot of these players do. We've talked about how young this team is, especially on the offensive side of the ball. So it's not only Frost who leaves that we have to watch, but also other coaches and players who might leave this program. So to say that it's going to be that this is a brand new era and it's just going to be so shiny and great. And from here on out, I can't say that because you just don't know in college football.
Here's my counter to that. Oh, go ahead, Eric. I'm sorry. I was going to counter that in a second.
Yeah, the player stuff. Wait, let's see who. I mean, if Frost leaves, I mean, we're acting like it's done. But I mean, let's just say
still an if at the moment that we're recording this.
A journalistic standpoint, all right. Because listen, I mean, if Tennessee job search has taught us anything, is anything's possible.
That's true.
Anything could change in a blink of an eye. The thing I will disagree with on the players, for example, like I think Milton is settled in. First of all, they have to sit out a year and things like that. They're going to say that now, but then the next head coach comes in. If it's, let's say it's hypothetically the guy that's been floated, Kevin Sumlin. If the player's like, ooh, Kevin Sumlin, that's pretty good. I could be Johnny Manziel, which, by the way, Milton has been compared to when he came here. So players are always going to adapt if they like the coach that's coming in and things like that. I think there are players on the roster that might leave and go where Scott Frost is, but they're not necessarily a full-time player now. And I'm not going to mention names, but I mean, there's certain kids that would make a lot of sense if they went there to get playing time. But regardless of that, we don't know if that will happen based on, who the next head coach is and who the staff will be and things like that.
Danny White's no idiot. Danny White understands that this roster was made for a certain head coach. It was molded by a certain head coach, and the next head coach probably needs to basically second that mold because this is what these players are used to.
Exactly. So I'm not as concerned about the player stuff because of that, what you just said there. I think the players will be fine. But obviously, yes, the coaching staffs, there's going to be guys who are going to go with Scott Frost in Nebraska and things like that. Look, this is a part of it, though, guys. This is not a surprise. This is what happens when you have success. I don't care. I mean, why did, it happened to USF with Willie Taggart. He left to go to Oregon. Boy, Chris Peterson finally left to go to Washington.
It's happened to Houston 3 times in the last 15 years.
This is the landscape of the sport, and I got bad news for you. More than likely, the next UCF coach that comes in, and if he's successful, he won't be staying long. That's what this job is right now. like it or not, you're not going to get a guy, in my opinion, that's going to stay 5-10 years. I can make the argument that it's hard for a guy to stay 5 to 10 years in a major program the way things are today. I mean, look what's unfolding at Florida State with Jimbo Fisher. Heck, when Ohio State, Urban Meyer, who's had an incredible run at Ohio State, people were like, is the program in decline after they got blown out by Iowa? Nick Saban, God forbid, lost a game to Auburn this past weekend, and I'm watching Paul Feinbaum, and Bama fans are ripping him because he's been playing Jalen Hurts, and why doesn't he play a real quarterback? So it's hard, man. I think the days of having a coach for 10 to 20 years at a place are very, 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 I think, are the exception to the rule now. I think, to me, if you can get a coach for 4, 5, 6 years and 8 years and get a good run, you're ahead of the game.
To go back to a previous point that I was going to make, I'll tell you why I do think the culture has been changed, and it has to do with a guy that you mentioned, Danny White. He signed a contract amendment. His contract is for 5 years, but it's automatically for 1 year annually on the anniversary date of his hire. But that lengthened commitment from Danny White was a big boost to the entire athletic program. In fact, I could even argue that it's a bigger deal for UCF athletics than whatever may happen with Scott Frost. And like we said, Danny White is not a stupid person. He has seen what this system has done. You know, the sort of the Oregon-style spread offense, which is just exciting and fun and makes headlines and puts together a really amazing product on the field and gets recruits in the door. And then also the defense as well, which, you know, flies around and creates turnovers even though they give up a ton of yards. But this is the kind of fun. This is the kind of of football program that he wanted to put together. So whether it's Scott Frost running the ship, or if it's somebody else, if it is like, for example, you say Eric Kevin Sumlin, or if let's say Frost leaves and Troy Walters gets a shot as a head coach here, I don't think that's changing. We're not going back to the 3 yards in a cloud of dust, you know, pro set stuff that O'Leary used to do. That is in the past. This is the new brand of UCF football, and I think that that's here to stay. It might get tweaked a little bit from coach to coach over the years, but this style, this brand of football is not going anywhere.
But that doesn't guarantee that things will stay the same. I mean, yeah, you might bring somebody in and it doesn't work out. So there's no guarantees. And hell, there's no guarantees if Scott Frost stays that the success would continue. I mean, that's why I laughed. I'm laughing that people are, oh, well, Scott Frost, say people were wondering if Scott Frost would even work after last year. People were like outraged that they lost to Arkansas State in the bowl game.
Yeah, people were kind of a little hurt after. It was because we lost the last 3, even though we should have lost the last 3.
Right. So you just never know, right? You just never know. I think you're right, though. I think Danny White has proven since he's been here, like just about every hire he's made has made a lot of sense, right? I think we all could agree on that. And I think he knows what he's doing. And thank God he's not like John Curry at Tennessee or the people at Arizona State that are going to hire Herman Edwards. So we're fine. I think, that's the thing. UCF's going to be fine. UCF's gone through a lot of different things in this program. We've gone through 2 winless seasons, for crying out loud, among other things. So
who are we to complain?
Yeah, no, we're fine. And I don't think anybody should be mad at Scott Frost. This makes a lot of sense. He's probably getting offered more money, more security from a long term. I'm sure this is a lengthy contract. He's probably got a lot of power there that he will get and things like that if he decides to go there. I don't blame him whatsoever. I think, to me, if you're a UCF fan, take note that he basically didn't even want to talk to Florida. He didn't, I don't think this was a situation of him not being happy at UCF. If anything, I think UCF's made this more complicated probably for him. I do think he really enjoys it being here. I think he enjoys the players. I think he enjoys the people he's working with. And I think he enjoys the staff that he has built. And I think this is tough because he knows, if he leaves, it's not like he's going to be able to bring every staff member. In a way, they're going to break up a little bit. So it's an emotional time. It's a difficult decision for him. And I have no, I don't blame him whatsoever. I think he's been upfront, and I commend him for that.
Any fans can be saddened if Frost leaves. They can be disappointed because their coach isn't sticking around. But if anybody is actually upset or angry at him or thinks that he has betrayed UCF if he leaves, needs to get out of their head and needs to realize the bigger picture of what not only what UCF has done, but what he's done for UCF, but what Scott Frost, what this means for him. You have to understand this is a dream job that he is possibly getting. It is what really maybe the only chance he'll have, because that job's not going to open for at least 2 or 3 more years, and who knows who Nebraska hires. Maybe the guy who they hire instead of Frost will be really good, and the job never comes open. So if he leaves, you can be sad, you can be disappointed, you can kick the ground, but you just don't be angry. Don't take it out on Scott Frost. He's the last person you need to be upset about.
Here's my question. So all these people that are turning on him, supposedly, right? What happens if like Saturday or Sunday he changes? What happens if he stays?
Oh, he's the best ever.
Then we're shocked. Yeah, we're shocked, and we love him.
Best
sudden,
coach ever.
Again, huh? All is good, right?
All is forgiven, of course. But to kind of dovetail off of what you just said, Murph, better to what is it? Don't be sad that it ended. Be happy that it happened. I know that's not much of a consolation to some folks, but that's just that's the approach that I'm taking with it. That this season has been really something. Real quick, I've got 2 rapid fire questions for both of you guys. Number 1, on a scale of 1 being he stays, 10 being he's already on a plane to Lincoln, what is your prediction for Sunday morning? Is Scott Frost still the UCF head coach, or is he on his way to Lincoln? 1 to 10.
I'd say it's a 9 because I don't think he's the head coach. I think he's the head coach till about 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Elo?
So not technically the morning.
I would say I concur with that. I've been very consistent about this. I've told people I thought Nebraska was definitely a legitimate threat.
And you were right.
And I expect a lot of people to say you're right, because a lot of people were scoffing at me. Oh, you're not going to go there. That's not that good of a job, and which I disagree with. Again, I'm a believer that a coach can make a job really good. Like I remember about a decade ago when Mike Shula was getting fired from Alabama, people were saying it's a bad job because of the shadow of Bear Bryant. I think Nick Saban's proven that shadow is okay. You can work around that. Yeah. So I think Scott Frost was destined for that job. I think he feels he was destined for that job. So I've always felt that way. Look, if he turns out he stays at UCF, hey, weirder things have happened, right? So I don't really I don't blame him, but I would say, I think we're going to know something one way or the other by Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening.
That's one hell of a rapid fire answer there, Elo.
But it's a complicated deal, man. A complicated deal. I mean, right. It's a complicated deal because I think he's very sincere. I think this is not an easy time for him. I don't think this is like, all right, I'm out of here, guys. See ya. I think there's some genuine. Let me ask you both this. I think, in a weird way, if UCF were to win the conference title game, it makes it easier because if you lose that game, now it's like, oh, I didn't really finish this. I think in a way, that's why I think he's really trying to lock in and win this title game because whatever decision he makes, it's easier than if you lose that game and you're like, oh.
Interesting. I'll say this. I do know for a fact heading into this weekend in the championship game that he really is emotionally torn, and he is a lot more emotionally torn than people think. I mean, the bottom line is this is a great place to be, and UCF has treated him well. And I think back to the soundbite that he had after the USF game about how this place is unbelievable, this team is unbelievable, the fans are unbelievable, the atmosphere is unbelievable, everything is unbelievable. And I thought to myself, well, we could read that one of 2 ways. Number one, he's just on an emotional high from the amazing game that we just had, and is speaking glowingly in terms about what this university is. Or number 2, that's one hell of a sales job for whoever the next guy may be, right? This place is unbelievable, and you would be stupid not to come here, because look at what we were able to do. So, my last rapid fire question for you. This one's going to get fun. Let us assume Scott Frost is leaving. Give me one name. Who do you want to be the next head coach?
I have no idea. I have absolutely. Why am I thinking that far ahead? Absolutely not.
Because it's not all that. Because it seems like
games.
It's not that far ahead. I'll tell you that.
Right, but I'll not play your games on like who can be the head coach. I will let the people that are smarter than me figure that out. We've mentioned Kevin Sumlin. That is my camp answer, but I'm sure Eric has a better answer.
Well, first of all, I have a feeling we're going to have a special edition of the Black and Gold.
Oh, we might have an emergency podcast next week or two.
Yeah, I have a feeling maybe around Sunday if our predictions are correct. So I have a feeling we'll have a much more time to break that down. But I'll say this. I mean, I think Kevin Sumlin, obviously, what he's done, he's been successful at A&M and Houston. I think will be obviously has been mentioned. I think, do you want to go internal? I think it depends on your philosophy. Do you believe a Chinander, for example, or Troy Walters, are they guys that you believe can take over this program and run with it, right? Like just run with it, continue to kind of what you've been doing. There's not really that big of an adjustment. I think the players would be for that. Beyond that, I mean, it depends. Do you go for a big name? Do you go for guys that are assistants? There's some names I like, but I don't know if they necessarily go in that direction. I'll give you, maybe like a guy like Ryan Day, for example, who is a quarterback coach, a co-offensive guy at Ohio State, has ties to Chip Kelly and Urban Meyer. Is that a guy you try to get who's unproven, or do you go after get a guy that's proven like Kevin Sumlin? I think that's the decision that you have to make if you're Danny White. And some would argue that maybe with this roster the way it is, you go for the proven guy, so that way you can maybe be back to be the favorites next year to go to the conference tournament. Kind of like what USF did. USF got Charlie Strong to replace Willie Taggart to kind of let keep the ship running. So it depends on your philosophy. Do you want to go get a proven guy, or do you try to get an unproven guy? I think that's some of the decisions are going to have to be made if they have to make it.
Okay, note to self, avoid rapid-fire questions with Eric Lopez. At gunpoint,
you got the names?
At gunpoint, I would love to see Troy Walters be the next head coach. Now, a lot of those names are interesting, but I'm in favor of, through 2 years of this Oregon-ish system, it's just so much fun. I don't want to let it go. And if I have to let Scott Frost go, then bring me Troy Walters. And let's because if he's good enough, listen, if Troy Walters is good enough to be considered for the Rice job, he's good enough to be considered for our job. So that's where we'll leave it at that. All right, we're going to take a break here on the Black and Gold Banneret podcast. Stick around. Coming up next, we're actually going to talk some football. We'll recap the war on I-4 that was, and it was a war, man. Holy smokes, what a game. We'll remember where we were for that as long as we live. And then we will preview the American Athletic Conference championship game between UCF and Memphis. Don't go away. The Black and Gold Banneret podcast is back after this. The Black and Gold Banneret podcast is brought to you by the Sam Unger Real Estate Team. Sam and his team proudly serve Orange, Seminole, and Lake counties, specializing in buying, selling, and new construction. Powered by eXp Realty. Sam is a proud UCF graduate, class of 2006, and fans, he's such a dedicated Knight fan that right now, if you work with him as your realtor, he will donate a portion of his commission to the UCF Football Excellence Fund in your name. The real estate market here in Central Florida has been on the move for some time now, so if you're ready to buy a new home or sell your current home, Sam's got you covered so you can find the right home at the right price in the right location. So give Sam a call right now at 407-790-9957. Again, that's 407-790-9957. Or visit him on the web at samsellsorlando.net. Again, that's samsellsorlando.net. You can also reach Sam on Facebook at facebook.com/samsellsorlando. Get in touch with the Sam Unger Real Estate Team today and make finding your dream home a reality.
Hello, Night Nation. I'm Andrew Fegley.
And I'm Trey Strelko. Where are we? This isn't our usual spot.
It looks like we've landed in the Black and Gold Banneret podcast.
Oh, yeah. I've heard of those guys.
You know, Nightline has UCF sports covered.
Week in and week out, we bring you interviews with newsmakers and in-depth analysis of UCF sports.
Subscribe to our weekly podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Be sure to subscribe to Nightline on YouTube, like us on Facebook, and follow us on Twitter at UCF_Nightline.
Trace, can we go back to the 1148 studios now and start working on our next all-new Nightline?
How do we get out of here? Go Knights!
Charge on.
Now back to you guys in the Black and Gold Banneret podcast.
Welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret podcast. Jeff, Sharon, Eric Lopez, Brian Murphy with you here on this championship week edition of the show. And reminder, we can subscribe to this podcast. You can subscribe to this podcast on Google Play, iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and TuneIn. Follow us at UCF_Banneret. And as well as on Facebook, facebook.com/Black and Gold Banneret. And, of course, at blackandgoldbanneret.com, where we have all kinds of fun stuff up there for you, including our live blog of what was, I think, let's just say it, this was the greatest football game in the history of UCF football, the entire program. This war on I-4 between UCF and USF, it just, I know it's almost a week over, a week past us now, but it just bears us mentioning, just putting a bow on this thing, and reliving what was a truly memorable Black Friday afternoon and evening in Orlando. 49-42 the final. Of course, you guys know the drill. UCF goes to 11-0, 8-0 in the conference. We jumped out in front 21-7 after one. USF then outscores UCF 27-7 in the middle two quarters before the Knights rip off another 3 touchdowns in the fourth. Both teams combined for 3 touchdowns in a 53-second span late in the fourth, capped off by Mike Hughes' 95-yard kickoff return. Monstrous television ratings for this game. This felt like it was one of those games where as the evening went on, it was Black Friday. Everyone got back from shopping, sat down with some leftovers from Thanksgiving Day, and turned on the game. It was like, wow, this game is pretty wild. And then people started calling one another and texting one another saying, hey, you got to turn on this crazy UCF-USF game to see what's going on. There was some massive reach from this game. Celebrities were tweeting about it. I mean, my God, Dale Earnhardt Jr. was saying every game should be like this. Some of the individual highlights, Quentin Flowers accounted for, did I even read this right? 605 yards of total offense by himself, and USF still loses the game. He threw for 503, 4 touchdowns and an interception. Mackenzie Milton at times seemed pedestrian by his standards, still went 29 of 44 for 373, 4 scores and a pick. Adrian Killens was the leading rusher for UCF with 82 net yards. Flowers ran for 102. He was the leading rusher. But Dredrick Snelson with 2 touchdown catches, including a big one late. Tyree McCants had 201 yards receiving in the first half, but finished with 227. The Knights defense clamped down on him. And for UCF defensively, Shaquem Griffin showed up big, had 9 total tackles, a half of a sack, and also had I think he had the game-winning fumble recovery. No, excuse me, that wasn't him. It was Shaquan Burkett who had the fumble recovery in the final minute that sealed the deal. But guys, I'm putting it out there for you. Greatest game in UCF history. Tell me why. Tell me what else you got? What are you coming in with?
I agree. Just because I guess the thing that pops to mind is, well, they did win that Fiesta Bowl, but the Fiesta Bowl opponent was Baylor. It wasn't your in-state arch rival. That game, we kind of went there as a massive underdog, sort of happy to be there, as opposed to the USF game, where not only did you were favored to win it. You had to win it in order to get your goals for what this team had already accomplished. Like, if you didn't win this game, is this team going to Birmingham for a bowl game? So it was that important. It was the other team on the other sideline that made it important, and the fan atmosphere made it important. A night game on national television with the night lights or the Starry Night thing that the kids do with their flashlights on their phones.
Love that.
The atmosphere was fantastic. The play, the game was not sloppy. There were some blown coverages that UCF kind of attributed to the fact of just miscommunication and the fact that they were tired. They had 2 fewer days to prepare and rest for this game, which Frost said was not shy in saying that he thought that was unfair. But this game was
still feels that way.
Yeah, of course. This was a well-played, exciting game between arch rivals who were fighting for not only a division championship, both of them fighting for a shot to win a conference championship and making it to a Power 6 bowl in a sold-out stadium. It was tremendous. And then, of course, the last 5 minutes are almost indescribable, which is kind of stupid because that's sort of like our job is to tell you what happened. I don't feel like I'm doing it justice by telling you what happened in the last 5 minutes because it's just nuts. It's absolutely nuts.
Yeah. I mean, it started with Snelson on that 45-yard pass from Milton that put UCF up 35-34. Otis Anderson on that beautiful call, that screen pass that capped off that drive. How about those drives at the end of the game that Mackenzie Milton put together to put UCF up? And then after that 83-yard touchdown pass from Flowers to Darnell Salomon, boom, Mike Hughes. Boy, has he been something this year with the play of the night. Go ahead, Eric. What your impressions from this crazy game?
I've been going to UCF football games on and off since 1998. That was my first game I ever went to. I visited a friend who was going to school at UCF, Dante Culpepper. You got to go see this kid. He was a senior. Faced a Jim Tressel-led Youngstown State team. So I've been going to UCF games since. I've seen Drew Brees, etc. I've been going to basketball games since like 2000, 2001. Same with baseball. The other sports more towards since like 07, let's say. There's not been a better UCF sporting event that I've ever been in. I've been at in person than that one. I mean, that thing had it all. Had drama, had suspense, unpredictability, environment, emotion, intensity. It's a game, and it's a great game when, for example, I watched it today, and I still have fun. It was still exciting to watch. And I think this is one of those games you can go back and watch anytime you want for the rest of your life. You'll be like, wow, I remember that game.
Yeah.
It was remarkable. I give credit to Quentin Flowers, who I think, and people won't like to hear this, I don't think any player has ever performed better in that stadium than Quentin Flowers did that day.
Well, that's statistically true because he actually set the opponent record for most total yards by a player. He actually broke a record set that was previously held by Tim Rattay when he was at Louisiana Tech for most total yards by an opponent against UCF.
I believe that was 98.
Yeah. Eric, we were sitting next to Colin Sherwin in the press box, who was on the podcast here last week, and Colin said in the press box, this is the greatest single performance he has seen by a USF football player ever. And it's true.
Rightfully so. And it's one of the best I've seen. I mean, he was tremendous. People said he couldn't throw. Just shut down the run. He lit up UCF secondary. It was like a Michael Vick type of game. I mean, once he took over that game, it was like, oh my God, they can't stop him. And remarkable. I mean, Kevin Smith had some monster games where he ran over 300 yards. That would be the argument, I guess, going back to the 2007 title game against Tulsa in the CUSA. But man, he was remarkable. In that sequence, Murph, I think we were all downstairs, down on the field, where Otis Anderson gets the touchdown. You're like, oh, they've got this done, 42-34. Then Flowers drills the long pass. They get the 2-pointer. It was just – and then UCF gets the kick return for Hughes, and everybody's excited. And then I realize, oh, wait, Flowers still gets the ball.
Yeah.
and he's driving, and he's driving. And if it wasn't for that fumble, I think he was going to come in and score. And who knows? So amazing game. And you're right, Jeff. You mentioned national audience on ABC. Adam Amin, who is a friend, but he's a phenomenal broadcaster. I thought the crew did an amazing job of that game. 4.6 million viewers for that game. It won its time slot. It's the third highest rated game on ABC and in that slot on Thanksgiving, Black Friday since 2002. It's a monster number. It's a major success. And I think for the rivalry, it was significant because I think that game has a chance to be like what Miami and Florida State in 1987 was. Miami and Florida State had a rivalry going, but it didn't really take off from a national standpoint until that 87 game. Where
that was the one with the long Michael Irvin pass, right?
Correct, yes. Where both teams were top 5. It was in October. It was on a CBS 3:30. It was really like, oh, people are paying attention to this Miami FSU game, and Miami made that long comeback. Florida State goes for 2. It gets knocked down. It's one of the great – I mean, so many NFL players played in that game. I thought that was the arrival of the Miami-Florida State game nationally. And I think this game, what it does now, because so many people enjoyed watching this game, that I think people now, the casual fan, you know what, I'm going to go watch the UCF-USF game when it's on. Because you know what, it's a pretty exciting game. You know, I've been a proponent of moving this game away from Black Friday, but I think I'm going to tell you that. Those television numbers are going to keep it on Black Friday. Because it was a major success. I just updated it on my blog. All right, I'll give the audience some perspective. It's the third most watched UCF game nationally all time. The Fiesta Bowl is number 1 at 11.3 million viewers watched the Fiesta Bowl. The Liberty Bowl against Georgia, Jeff. Did you cover that, or where were you for that?
I was not there for that. Unfortunately, I was back in Orlando for that.
That's right. That did 4.7 million when UCF beat Georgia.
That was New Year's evening. Evening.
Yep. That one did a 4.7 million on ESPN. This game did 4.6 million, which is more than the Mississippi State UCF Liberty Bowl in 07 that did 3.9 million.
Wow, so this was the most watched non-UCF bowl game ever.
Correct. As of this moment, yes, it is, and I think it will be. Yeah, it surpassed the South Carolina UCF game from a national standpoint. UCF South Carolina did 3.2 million in 2013. Now, locally, the game did an 11.1. It is just still shy of the South Carolina game, which did an 11.5 rating. That's talking about Central Florida only. But the Orlando number was still the number 1 rated market for that game. The
it should be noted that market, by the way, that's Orlando, Daytona Beach, and Melbourne, which I think it's ranked in the That's in the
correct.
Now that's in the teens, which you rank up all the TV markets in the United States. I forget exactly where it is. I'll get that for you in a second. But that's a lot of people in a big market.
It's big. It's probably around 240,000. It's hard to determine because, as Jeff, you've talked about this before on the podcast. Less people now probably have cable or have TVs. A lot more people watch games on stream. So while you're like, wait a minute, how can there be more people that watch the South Carolina game have a higher rating? Well, there was probably more people that had TV options than they did, Black Friday this Friday. The Fiesta Bowl, by the way, still the most watched UCF game locally. That did a 17.4 when they beat Baylor, and that's going to be a hard number to top because. If you remember, that was prime time on New Year's Day night on ESPN. So I know some people have asked me, do you think that if UCF were to get to the Peach Bowl, would that break the record, that rating? And I will say no, because the Peach Bowl is going to be a 12:30 p.m. kickoff compared to a prime time start kickoff time. And it more, let's be honest, I mean, more people are at home.
Might depend on the opponent, though, do you think?
Sure. No, that's fair. I mean, that's fair. Like if they're playing Alabama, for example, that obviously could change, that's must-tune TV. Whereas if they're playing, I don't know, or if they're playing a Georgia team that just lost in an SEC title game or an Auburn team that just lost in an SEC title game, maybe people may not tune in frequent numbers and people may just go to bars. But it's going to do a big number. Let's not kid. But significant number, significant success, huge for both programs. Huge for the conference. It was a major success. They were put on a big spot, and they won that spot. They beat the Missouri-Arkansas game comfortably in viewership. They crushed Nebraska and Iowa. They were the most watched. Them and the Miami-Pittsburgh game were the 2 most watched games that day, and both of those games were, like, I believe, the top 5 most watched games of the weekend. Obviously, Auburn, Alabama, and Ohio State, Michigan blew everybody away, but that's a success. That's a success for everybody, and I think it bodes well for the future of that rivalry. That I think more people will tune in, and I do think now that game will definitely stay on Black Friday because it's a good TV slot, and if it doesn't, it probably means they'll get a really good TV slot, prime time or something like that down the road.
Couple notes that I wanted to pass along. The other number that I think that was really important for this game was 47,129. That was the attendance of the game. It was the third highest attendance number in the history of Spectrum Stadium, fifth highest in school history, and it was the largest number of people ever to see a UCF victory in a stadium. All those other games, UCF lost.
Well, let's think about that. What I'm trying to think. What do they have the list?
Yes.
Right.
The number one, it was the conference championship game against Tulsa in 2005.
Yep.
Loss.
I was there
in the Citrus
Bowl.
Bowl.
Up at the Citrus Bowl. Yeah.
Number two was the Fill the Bowl game against Virginia Tech in 2000 or 2000?
Yep. It was there 2000. It was 2000. Okay. It was Michael Vick.
Vick was hurt that game, I think, too. He didn't play.
He did not play because he got hurt the week before at Miami. They lost to Miami in a big showdown, and I remember people were like, "Oh, no, Michael Vick." Of course, then Lee Suggs ran it all over us.
Right.
But I was there. I still have a T-shirt of that game, actually. But yeah, I was there.
Number three, 2009 against Miami.
Was there? Yeah, night game.
I was there
Miami
for that one too. I was actually working that day. That was it. Kind of snuck up on everybody about how big the crowd was. A lot of Miami folks in the building. That's the largest crowd in the history of Spectrum Stadium. Number four, South Carolina.
Yeah,
2013.
we were there for that. That was a noon kick too.
Yep, and this one was number 5.
That's amazing. That's a pretty good list. Glad we won one finally.
I know, largest crowd to see a UCF win. There it is, 47,129. So
basically, what you're saying, guys, is that if UCF is going to win, the fans should show up, but not too much.
Well, we're hoping that. Well, remember that does officially qualify as a sellout because that's larger than the actual seating capacity of the stadium, so it's above 100% capacity. So UCF at 11-0, dovetail that nicely into one more game, and that is the American Athletic Conference Championship, which will be this Saturday at noon again on ABC. Back-to-back UCF games on the national TV network on free television, as we like to say. And it's a rematch with the Memphis Tigers. Memphis comes in with only one loss. That game that they lost was to UCF back on September 30th on that Saturday. Remember, that game got moved because of the storm. UCF outpaced Memphis 40-13 in that game. But this is still a very, very good Memphis team. Riley Ferguson, we know how good they were, and it was really impressive that UCF from the outset took care of business in that first game. The Tigers come in ranked number 14 in the is it 14 in the coaches poll?
I think it's 14 in the coaches poll.
14 coaches, 16 Associated Press. UCF comes in 11 coaches, 12 AP. We'll get to the rankings flap here in just a little bit, but. Interesting that UCF is a 7-point favorite in this game, and down from 7.5. That tells me that Vegas is kind of factoring in the Scott Frost situation because remember, UCF jumped all over Memphis in the second quarter of their first matchup. Knights actually trailed after the first quarter, 7-6, and then scored 17 in the second, and then it was pretty much all she wrote from there. One of the some of the numbers there. Riley Ferguson was 27 of 49 for 321, 1 touchdown and 3 picks, and was sacked twice. Meanwhile, Mackenzie Milton was 19 of 31 for 253, 3 touchdowns and an interception. Adrian Killens had 115 yards on the ground, 96 of them on one play, a UCF record for a touchdown run. Taj McGowan, who was hurt, who's hurt later, or currently hurt, but he wasn't currently hurt. Taj had the other touchdown, Traquan Smith had 2 touchdowns on 3 catches, and that was the drill for that game. But is this a Brian? I'll start with you. Is this a different Memphis team than the one we saw back in September?
Yeah, it is. I think what's most different is, everybody looks at their offense, right? And their offense is fantastic. UCF is the only team to hold them below 30, and they held them to 13. And no one else has held them below 30. They put on 70 on ECU, and the offense stands out. But really, what has changed is the defense from that game in September. They were missing a lot of starters back then, a lot of key cogs early in the year due to injuries. Those guys are back now. Back when they played UCF, Mike Norvell and his crew were really kind of scrambling to figure out who they wanted on the field to stop McKenzie Milton and company. Well, they got healthy, and so I think this is a tougher defense than what UCF saw back in September, and it's going to be interesting. I agree with the spread. It is a little weird because that also means that they're a favorite by 7. That means that UCF would be basically a pick'em 1-point favorite if the game was at Memphis. What's more entertaining is that the spread is the over-under is north of 80. It's 82 right now. It was 85 and a half, and now it's 82. So it's going to be fun. 49-42 last week may have just been the appetizer.
Eli?
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I would agree with that. I will say this, too, because some people have asked me about this. I don't think the distractions will play any role in this game on Saturday because both teams are going through it. Mike Norvell is a name that has been thrown out there for Arkansas,
right,
among other jobs. I mean, I'm surprised he hasn't been thrown into the Tennessee debacle yet. Maybe he will at some point after the game. So both teams are going through it. So I don't want to hear that as an excuse. I
always thought distractions was the whole concept of distractions is just a media concocted excuse. There's no one on this planet is better at compartmentalizing things than athletes and coaches.
Well, and I've tried to explain that to fans, and maybe you and I, Jeff, we've been around athletes, and I've broadcast. I mean, the athletes do have a way. I mean, people don't remember this. These people are used to performing in front of thousands of people. They have to block them out. So they know how to block stuff out. Parents are the ones that are more affected by this stuff. And that goes back to, some people are wondering, well, geez, like, should Scott Frost tell the players or this? The problem is if he tells them, let's say in a private meeting, he says, guys, I'm leaving. Well, guess what's going to happen? Players are going to tell their parents, and parents are going to tell people, and then it gets out anyway. So you really sometimes can't tell the players what's really going on because then they're going to tell their kids their parents what's going on or their friends or what's going on, and then it comes out. So it's kind of a no-win situation there. But I don't believe the players do not get, I don't think McKenzie Milton's thinking as he's dropping back to throw, he's thinking, man, I don't know if my coach is going to be here. It's nonsense. All right. I mean, they're going to play and the better team's going to win. And look, Memphis, like Murph said, they're a much better team now. I think Ferguson and those guys are much more comfortable defensively. They now have a better idea of what they're doing. I still think UCF's the better team because I think they have the better defense than Memphis. I still question Memphis's defense, but look, I mean, it could come down to red zone defense, and I would be surprised if this game was not much better than the first meeting. Plus, Memphis has the advantage. I mean, they got blown out in that game. They got embarrassed in that game. A lot of things went against them. They're the ones that get to adjust, and I think they'll be ready to play. I do think there is a letdown factor with such an emotional game against USF. I don't know if the fans will be as jacked up in this game at a noon kickoff than they were for that USF game, guys. Maybe they'll get going towards the second half, but I can't imagine the environment being the same that it was for Black Friday. Am I wrong on that?
It's a concern on my part. I'll tell you that. I did notice though that the ticket prices were cheaper for this game than they were for the regular season game. So I think that UCF and the American have been going all in on trying to get people to fill the stands. I do know that talking to some folks who I've been tight with who are fans and are around the program, they're getting the sense that like the word got out after USF that okay, this championship game is big, we got to show up for this one, and people are starting to jump on the bandwagon even a little bit more than they were before. I'm concerned about when I look at the stuff in between the lines. In the game notes, there's this little section that Andy Seeley and the guys put together called Tale of the Tape. And they show the team statistics for both squads basically right next to each other. And if you look at the offensive numbers between both of these teams, and you look at the defensive numbers, they are nearly identical. It's almost frightening. UCF is averaging 48.3 points a game. Memphis is averaging 47. UCF has 275 first downs this year. Memphis is 278. The Knights are averaging 198 yards a game on the ground. Memphis is averaging 202. UCF's got 325 yards passing per game. Memphis is averaging 347. UCF is giving up 155 yards a game on the ground. Memphis is giving up 193. That's where I think that UCF may have an advantage is the weakness of Memphis's run defense. And so that's going to be big, I think, in the first half in particular if they can get guys like Killens going. But yeah, boy, we're going to see. It's just going to be a long day if you're on defense for either of these squads. Basically, is this what we're going to see? Is it just going to be a track meet? Everyone scores on every possession, and whatever, and whoever has the ball last is going to win this, Brian?
Well, I hope not, because that is kind of boring in a sense. That like
what?
There's got to be it is like. You don't want to see a touchdown on every drive. You don't want to see a touchdown on every drive. I'm sorry, you don't. You'd like to see I'm sorry, some semblance of possibly maybe a little bit of perhaps some defense. That's what I would like to see. And so
what you're saying is, Murph, you don't want this to turn into a Big 12 game.
I don't want this to be I do not want this to be Oklahoma State, Oklahoma. I do not. But
I mean, the Big 12 will be watching this one. Who knows, right?
They might be. I think one thing to watch if you just want to watch matchups, Memphis has got a fantastic receiver in Anthony Miller that most people outside of Memphis probably don't know about. If you follow American Conference football, you do know about Anthony Miller.
Oh yeah.
But if you don't, he's fantastic. He's already broken Isaac Bruce's record for receiving yards in Memphis history. So when he played UCF back in September, UCF held him to 3 catches on 37 yards. Since that game, he's played 7 games. He's averaging 131 yards a game and has scored 11 times. I want to see either Mike Hughes or Neville Clark on Anthony Miller. Like, I just want to see how that goes. I want to see those matchups. I really like Neville Clark. He came back from the suspension at the middle of the year, and I think he's got the makings of a true shutdown corner. And I don't know what else you can say about Mike Hughes, the guy who has been not only a first-team cornerback for UCF with the conference awards today. He's a first-team defensive player, but also a second-team special teams player. It's amazing what he can do for a guy who just joined the team in August. So I just want to see those two guys on Anthony Miller and see what they can do to confuse Riley Ferguson. I think that matchup's going to really be just entertaining to watch.
Yeah. By the way, we should pass along big time congrats to UCF. This is unprecedented in the history of the program. An American Athletic Conference record 16 all-conference honorees. Mackenzie Milton was the Offensive Player of the Year, named this year in the conference. Scott Frost was named Coach of the Year, obviously.
Shocker.
Yeah, stunner right there, right? I'm counting up here. First team all-conference, you have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 UCF Knights. First team all-conference. Aaron Evans, Jordan Johnson on the offensive line, Jordan Akins at tight end, Milton at quarterback, Adrian Killens at running back, Jemias Pittman is defensive lineman, Shaquem Griffin, senior linebacker, Mike Hughes, like you mentioned, Brian, and Kyle Gibson is the defensive backs. And then you had another 7 more on the second team.
And that second team includes Mike Hughes again.
Yeah, and this is mind-blowing. Traquan Smith is a second-team all-conference performer.
Yeah, I know.
As a wide receiver.
But there are some crazy good receivers in this conference. We can understand that.
Yeah, but still, I thought he would have been a shoo-in first-teamer. Wyatt Miller, offensive lineman. Tristan Hill on the D-line. Shaquan Burkett, the linebacker. And both of the kicking specialists, Matthew Wright and Mac Loudermilk, made second team. Mike Hughes, like you mentioned, the second team returner. He got named to the team twice, which almost seems like it should be illegal. That just tells you what kind of a team UCF's got. Now all these accolades coming in, let me ask you guys this as we finish up the preview of this game. If UCF loses this game, is the season a failure?
No.
Because I'm getting some vibe from people, out there saying, man, if we lose this game, I don't know what's going to. And there are some people I think are getting a little overconfident because Memphis got blown out by us in the first game. Do not sleep on this team. This is a good Memphis Tiger football team. If it wasn't for us, they'd be the talk of the group of five.
Yeah. If it wasn't for Mackenzie Milton, Riley Ferguson would be the offensive player of the year.
That's true.
Mike Hughes is second team kick returner. You know who the first teamer is? It's Tony Pollard from Memphis.
Yeah.
This team is loaded with really good explosive star talent. It's always going to be a fun game. People who say that if UCF loses this game, the season is, if they use the word failure, they're out of their gourd. They're completely lost with reality.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think you got to a championship game that, quite frankly, nobody thought they could get to before the year. If they would have lost the USF game, then yeah, I think that would have stung because of who you lost to and the opponent and everything. But you beat USF. You prevented them from getting to the championship game. You prevented them from getting their biggest win in program history, getting to the biggest bowl game in their program history. This season, you've got some good wins. If you lose this game, it's a good year. It's still a very good year. Obviously, maybe not the ending you were hoping for, but it's still a very good year considering where we thought this team was in August when some people were wondering if they would even be bowl eligible.
Yeah, that's true. I tell you what, though, to have this game on your home field, you guys know me. I'm constantly worried.
Oh, what a shot!
Yeah, excuse me.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, you got this game on your home field. They had national television. You got the New Year's Six bowl game just sitting there waiting for the taking. And, this is a Memphis team that's going to come in pretty pissed about the last time they played us.
Well, let me ask you this. Hold on. Murph.
Okay.
Murph, before this year, Murph, what was the last UCF football season that you were at?
The last one I was at full time was 2008.
Oh boy! Sorry about that.
I spent a lot of time. I spent a lot of time in California, guys. I watched from afar.
That was the 4 and 8 year, right? Is that, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah, that was 4 and 8, Michael Greco. For some reason, I thought you ended on a high note, but I guess not.
I went to the Fiesta Bowl because it was an easy drive from Los Angeles to Glendale.
True, but here's what I'm saying: since Brian Murphy has returned to covering UCF football, UCF has not lost a game.
There you go.
Right?
That's all I'm saying.
Take note, Coach Frost.
And that's why we're not. That's right, and we're not going. I'm not buying Lars Anderson's report that you're going to be named Nightline's new correspondent at 4:00 on Saturday during the game. I don't believe that for a second because you know better that Nightline is 2-9 against us in fantasy leagues this year, and I don't think you want to join that debacle.
I don't think it merits much further mentioning than that.
But no, I look. I will say it's a big game. A couple quick notes. The American Championship game on ABC. Steve Levy, Brian Greasy, and Todd McShay calling the game.
Okay.
The last 2 years, the game's been on ABC. It's averaged 2 million viewers. Last year's game did 2 million viewers. The year before, when it was Houston and Temple, did 2.4 million. It will go up against the Big 12 title game, Oklahoma and TCU. So don't expect the numbers to be as big compared to the USF game because with stiffer competition. But so keep that in mind as you watch that game completely. So I still think UCF wins. I think they win it. I think it's a closer game, obviously, but I think they win it. And I think all parties will, I hope, will be happy. And I think regardless of what happens after that, I think people should give Scott Frost an ovation and a thank you as if he does decide to leave. 20 years ago, boys, UCF played at Nebraska. UCF led by Scott Frost, put a scare into Nebraska, led it to half, fell short. The Nebraska fans gave the program a standing ovation as they were walking up. I've had people that were at the game tell me that story. I think it's only fair that we return the favor. I hope that's the case. I think that would mean a win because obviously a loss makes things a little bit more awkward. But if it happens, and who knows, maybe if he wins, he changes his mind or doesn't change his mind and says, yeah, I'm just coming back. So, hey.
If they win, do they carry do the players carry Scott Frost off the field?
I was just going to say that. I hope they do. I hope they do. I first of all, I've never seen, I don't think they ever carried O'Leary off the field, did they?
No, he's kind of a tough guy to carry off the field.
Oh, please.
Oh,
ouch,
come on.
ouch,
If the Giants can carry Parcells off the field, somebody could carry George O'Leary off the field.
The Packers carried Vince Lombardi off the field.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, no, I actually, you know what, Jeff? I know you brought that up early in the week. Like, did they ever carry George O'Leary off the field? I literally spent an hour looking for Google images of George O'Leary carried off.
It would have been after the Fiesta Bowl, and they didn't do it.
They did not do it.
Now I don't know if George told them, "Listen, don't carry me off." Some guys do that. Some guys are like, "Don't carry me off the field. I don't want to be carried off the field." Yeah. But if it was ever going to happen, that would have been it, and they didn't carry him off the field. Well, by the way, one quick note: UCF all time in conference championship games is 2-1, 2-2, 3-2. So, oh wait, no, I'm wrong about that.
What?
Sorry, I botched that completely.
It's getting late here, folks.
I know it's late. I'm sleep deprived.
Oh, I know. I know one record. They have never lost a conference championship game that Brian Murphy's been at.
It's
I
true.
think that's true as well. Guys, if we learned anything, it's that I am the Oracle. I make everything well.
Can we just carry Brian off? Can we just have Brian get carried off? I mean, I think that should be in play here.
Well, people, you can do that after the game. A few hours after the game, plenty of people will be carrying me somewhere, I'm sure.
It is the Knights' first conference championship game since they were in Conference USA, by the way. So, and by the way, it was the Knights had four Eastern Division championships in Conference USA, 2 Conference USA championships. So this will be the 5th conference championship game for the Knights in school history.
Right,
they are
they're 2-2, right? They lost in 05,
right.
1 in 07, 1 in 2010, and then lost that weird one at 2012 at Tulsa.
Oh, that 2012 one drives me ballistic to this day. But anyway, all right. So again, noon ABC, UCF against Memphis. If you can't be at the stadium, make sure you watch on TV. Get UCF a good number. Real quick before we go, just want to bounce around to some other sports news here as we finish out. Volleyball earlier tonight. UCF volleyball season came to an end in Athens, Georgia. The Knights actually swept USF twice to finish the regular season. So the Knights won 6 matches in a row and 8 of their last 9 to finish out the regular season. And went and got an invitation, real quick turnaround, invitation to the National Invitational Volleyball Championship, kind of the NIT of of volleyball, and got sent up to a pod, as they call it, in Athens, Georgia. Defeated UNC Greensboro in 3 on Tuesday. That was yesterday from when we were recording this, and faced Georgia earlier tonight. But got the loss 3 in a sweep, 3-0. In her final match as a UCF Knight, Kia Bright had 8 kills, and Taylor Rickey, by the way, also in her final match for UCF, 6 blocks. Miranda Watkins had 12 assists and an ace in her final match at UCF. So we'll wish those players well as they finished up on Senior Day last Wednesday. But congratulations to them on a job well. And another 20-win season for Todd Dagenet. He finished it. This team finishes 20-14 on the year. And let me see if I can pull up their total schedule. Yeah, 20-14 on the year, and 12-8 in conference. In a very tough conference. Once again, it's only getting tougher with the addition of Wichita State. And real quick, I wanted to hit hoops. Women's basketball's 4-3 right now. They are coming off of at the UCF Thanksgiving Classic, a pair of wins over IUPUI and Northern Iowa. Their next game is Thursday, which is actually tomorrow night from when we're recording this. They're at Samford. By the way, old conference opponent Samford, back in the old A Sundays. That game's at 7 o'clock in Birmingham, Alabama. You can watch that. There's a link on UCFKnights.com. And real quick, guys, I want to go through men's basketball. They are 4-2. Hey, by the way, the UCF did get a victory over Nebraska in the Advocare Invitational down at Disney. That was in their opener, 68-59. But after that, the Knights dropped their last two games against number 20 West Virginia by a score of 83-45. I'm pretty sure they were happy that happened right across from the USF football game because nobody watched it. Taco Fall had 11 points in that game, by the way, and then against St. John's, tough loss for UCF in this one, 46-43. Chad Brown had 12 points to lead UCF on that one. The next game for UCF, again, Thursday at home against Mizzou. But Mizzou will be without that prospect, Eric.
Yeah, Michael Porter.
Yeah, Michael Porter's out for the year. What a bummer that is.
Yeah, back surgery. So his Missouri career, more than likely, because he'll probably turn pro, will be 2 minutes in his career. So.
Talk about one and done.
But you know what? They're still very good. I watched them, and they were at Disney at the Advocare, and they got to the final, had a lead on West Virginia. They coughed it up. Kind of a weird schedule because they played there on Sunday. Now they're coming back for a Thursday game against the Hoops team. I watched the men's team against Nebraska up close. I watched them up close against St. John's on Sunday when they struggled offensively. And, Coach Dawkins have said it's a work in progress. They clearly missed BJ. They've had to adjust this team multiple times because you had Aubrey Dawkins who went hurt. So, tough times. I think they're going to have to win on defense because their offense is going to be up and down. It's very young, and they're just going to have to kind of get by, I think, until BJ gets back.
Yeah. And at least we found something in Cesar De Jesus. I think he's been playing very well for UCF, by the way, coming on through. He was 6 of 10 from the field for 15 points in that game. So at least he's carrying some of the load, right, Brian?
Yeah, and like Eric said, he's kind of one of the only guys right now who's doing anything positive shooting. I mean, when you shoot 8% from three over 2 games, that's not optimal. And when you turn it over 47 times in those 2 games as well, again, you're not going to win a lot of games. I talked to Coach Dawkins today. The shooting part isn't as concerning. It's just more about maybe it's just a little bit of a rut, but the turnovers are really frustrating to them. Even Chad Brown talked about it's maturity. I think AJ Davis said it's maturity. We got to be more mature about it, and that's what's really frustrating them right now, more than the shooting woes. So we'll see that tomorrow night. I will be there. The game's at 9 o'clock on ESPN2.
Yeah.
And if you had looked at this like a few weeks ago, it'd be like, you know what? Not an awful game. You got an NIT Final Four team with BJ Taylor and Taco Fall going against Michael Porter Jr., the number 1 pick in the upcoming draft in the NBA. And wow, does that thing look different now? There's no Michael Porter Jr., there's no BJ Taylor, there's no Aubrey Dawkins. Taco Fall sort of working his way back into the rotation. So I don't know what we're going to see tomorrow.
Well, ESPN2, what would be nice to see is a victory on national television in the home stadium. So that'll be at CFE Arena. Again, ESPN2, 9 o'clock on Thursday. The Knights then travel out to Tuscaloosa to face Alabama on Sunday, December the 3rd, before they have almost a week off before they play their next home game against Southern. All right, boys, let's wrap this thing up here on the Black and Gold Banneret podcast as we finish up heading into championship week for football. Brian, we'll start with you. What do you have on tap for us this week?
So I just published a story today about how UCF's college football playoff ranking doesn't matter. It's kind of parroting what Eric was saying.
What do you mean it doesn't matter? Aren't we being disrespected by moving up only one spot?
And look, I owe it all to Eric Lopez, who bust that door wide open 3 weeks ago here, and I fully agree with it then. And as the banter and the vitriol has picked up with each Tuesday night, I need people to understand it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. Okay, so that's on the site right now. You can read it. It's a great read. I think what I wrote is great. Anyway, I also. Well,
For the record, we do too, Brian. You should know that.
Thanks. I will be at the UCF basketball game tomorrow night, men's basketball. I will be live tweeting that. I do hope to have my UCF Memphis football game preview up tomorrow night. Boy, I hope that if at latest Friday morning, but certainly I'm trying to shoot for tomorrow night, and then I'll be at the basketball game, and then Friday, hoping to get an article up about how this UCF football team, no matter if they win on Saturday or not, no matter what happens the rest of the way, is the greatest football team in UCF football history. And thank you, Eric. And you know what? It's not even a hot take anymore. It's not even a hot take because I said this back on the podcast 4 weeks ago.
It's a warm take.
Yeah. And we were supposed to argue about this, and maybe we will down the road. But
let's wait until we see what Saturday brings us. But by the way, how about Danny White's reaction to the ranking the other night? I love that. I love having an AD that is not afraid to mix it up, and I mean because he said exactly what all of us were thinking.
Can I say something though?
Okay.
What were people expecting? Were people actually?
I think people were expecting more than one spot. I think people were expecting 2 or 3, I mean, up to about 12.
Why? Because whether you like it or not, the committee has actually been pretty consistent. They really have been very consistent.
You're right. They have been consistently sandbagging UCF the entire year.
Okay. That's fair, but again, let me make this clear. We're acting like this is a shocking development in college football, whereas this has been going on forever. I even tweeted this yesterday. All right, let me bring you this. You remember 1999? Okay, Tulane 12-0, Sean King, Tommy Bowden. 98 Tulane team. 1999 Marshall team that went 13-0.
Yep.
2004 Utah, Alex Smith, Urban and Meyer, 12-0.
How many different Boise State teams went undefeated?
2006, 2009 to be specific. Both went, one of them went 06, 13-0, 14-0 in 09, and then Utah in 08, 13-0. TCU in 2010, 13-0. You know what all they have in common with UCF? None of them sniffed a national championship game or even a playoff if they would have had it back then.
No, but I think the difference was that those teams were all ranked in the top 10 when they went into the bowl season. UCF can't even get that far. That's, I think, what people are upset about.
They're going to get into the top 10 if they win out. They're going to get into that top 10.
But I think the whole point is that we should be in the top 10 now. I think that's what everyone's point is.
Who cares? Does that matter? So you feel better if you're 4 spots ahead?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. That's what we're
especially when you got 9-3 Stanford 2 spots ahead of you, who moved up 9 spots.
Which I predicted would happen because they got into the Pac-12 championship game. This is historically what the committee has done since they've had the playoff. They rank very high, if they can, the teams that are in the Power 5 conference championship games. This is nothing new. It's going to continue next year, the year after that, until the system completely changes. You want to change it? Fine. Don't watch the bowl games. Don't watch any of those games. Protest it. Don't come as sheep. That's what I would suggest.
So, based off of that, Eric Lopez, what do you have on tap this week?
Well, I'm going to be at a college cup. I'm going to the college cup for the women's soccer Final Four is here. Former UCF coach. I don't know how often we're going to be saying that in the next week or two. Will be Amanda Cromwell will be in attendance. Obviously, her UCLA Bruins made it to the college cup. So I'm excited for her. She'll be there with UCLA. They play in the semis on Friday. Obviously, I'll be at the championship game on Saturday. I will not be joining you two guys in the blog because
you're working the game.
I'm working the game. Jeff, you helped out. I guess you were the agent, the Jimmy Sexton, if you will.
I'll take my 10%, please. Thank you.
You pulled me away from the blog because I will be working spotting for the IMG, the national radio rights holder for the championship game. IMG will have it. Alan Bestwick will be calling the game. I'll be working with him along with Tony Pike, former Cincinnati Bearcat. That's the
Tony Pike. Okay.
Like that. That'll be the national radio broadcast. So that's where the IMG has the broadcast rights to that. So I will be a part of that on the radio site. So I will not be joining you two gentlemen in the blog. But if you want some good omen, I've done 2. I believe this will be from a home game standpoint, this would be the 3rd game that I have not been a part of the blog, and UCF won those games. So when I work, usually UCF wins. That's my point.
There you go.
Well, to that point, if anything that's happened over the last 4 months, anything that's happened, it's happened, and UCF has still won. So anything, and so really, like, I put a new picture on the wall, and UCF won that week. Oh, it must have something to do with that picture.
Whatever works, man. Just do it one more time, right? Just do it, whatever's working there.
Yep.
So I know, Murph, you'll be there. Jeff, we're working behind the scenes to sneak you in there. Maybe you get a pop-in visit, kind of like that surprise, shocking visit in WWE when you least expect the guy to return, like, when Chris Jericho comes back.
Do you have my music ready to go? No.
Murph, you got it right
now. Yeah. Well, no, because I was doing this last week. I put, I think I attributed HBK's music to Tom Brady. So, Jeff, do you have somebody in mind that maybe, I don't know, like a Diesel, anything from Generation X, maybe?
Gosh.
Come on.
What was that song? What was that song? Out of Control. Who did that song back in the days?
Can you really, by the way, address your pathetic New York Giants before we go and the disgrace that they've become, benching Eli Manning in what I think is bad news from a UCF standpoint, is bad news if you're a Blake Bortles fan, because I think Eli, clearly this is the end of Eli Manning with the Giants, and he's going to be a free agent. If you saw Tom Coughlin's reaction, Tom Coughlin's a big Eli guy for obvious reasons. So this is not good news for Blake Bortles. But go ahead, address it, Jeff.
Okay, well, real quick before I address that, Brian, I believe the song you're looking for. I was thinking of Hoobastank's "Out of Control," but actually the proper music is Pearl Jam's "Not for You." So go listen to that. "Not for You" by Pearl Jam.
Fantastic.
The regarding the Eli thing, I blame John Mara. I blame the ownership. He was the one who made this call. The call doesn't get made without his say so.
Geno Smith,
yeah, unbelievable. Really, as though we need to find out as though we need to find things out about Geno Smith that we don't already know. What, you didn't see the 30 games of tape that he had beforehand? Are you kidding me on that? And if you're going to put Davis Webb in there, I mean, okay, fine, but Eli got me 2 Super Bowls. He's the greatest quarterback in New York Giants history. Mark that down. That's a fact. When you put together the all-time Giants team, Eli Manning's the quarterback. Everyone else is a distant second, including Phil Simms and Y.A. Tittle, the late Y.A. Tittle. So
Sammy Baugh.
Did Sammy Baugh play with the Giants? No, he was a Redskin. Sammy Baugh was.
I thought he played with the Giants.
No. I don't know. Did he play with the Giants? No, he didn't play with the Giants. Charlie,
I know Jeff Hostetler did.
Hostetler did, but he's
won
somewhere way down the line. Yeah, won a Super Bowl, but
so
did he play? No. Sammy did not play with the Giants. He was a Redskin his entire career.
Oh my God! I apologize, America.
That's all right. That's right. Nobody.
I'm embarrassed.
You might be thinking of Charlie Connerly, who was an excellent quarterback.
No, I absolutely was not thinking of Charlie Connerly. But thank you for trying to save me there.
Listen, here's the life raft. I'm trying to help you out on this one, but go ahead, Eric.
My question to both of you is Blake Bortles going to be out of a job a year from now because Eli Manning's going to be in Jacksonville? Because I think that's a strong possibility.
There's your UCF tie-in, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And if you're Brandon Marshall, is Brandon Marshall a curse? Like everywhere
Brandon
he
Marshall
goes,
is not a stop. It's not. It's this. None of this happened because of Brandon Marshall. Stop it.
What does he do now? Does he he's not going back to the Giants? He's not going to. What does he do now?
Listen. Brandon has done such good work off the field that he could walk away from the game right now and be perfectly fine. He's done such good advocacy work for mental health. He'll have a much longer career doing that than he will as a pro football player, and probably a more successful career doing that than being a pro football player. And he's been a pretty successful pro football player. Okay, so I think Brandon's fine. The Eli thing to Jacksonville in place of Blake, that's interesting to me. That's really interesting. I mean, I would hate to see Blake lose his opportunity, considering that the Jacksonville's been pretty good this year, and he's managed to not get in the way of that. But if you're Doug Marrone, you don't want You don't want a quarterback that you have to keep out of the way in order for you to win. You want a quarterback who can win football games. I think Eli probably does have 2 or 3 good years left in him. You plug him into that offense, things can get really interesting in Jacksonville in a hurry. I just if that does come to pass and it comes at the expense of Blake Bortles, it'll be bittersweet for me to see that.
Well, I saw it was Mike Florio today. I think on his show took you could take either Eli to Jacksonville or the field to any other team, and I think he took Jacksonville. I think he feels that strongly that could happen. And I know it's only one endpoint, but Mike Florio is pretty well plugged in.
Yeah, Mike Florio knows what he's talking about. What's Blake's contract? When does that come to an end?
Goodness, why couldn't we talk
he's
about
due? Yeah, I know, right? He's due. His base salary.
With fantasy questions. What's the Eli impact to Jacksonville? Yeah, fantasy. That's what Murphy knows. Doesn't care about contracts.
Well. Bortles is Blake's 2018 cap number is $19 million.
Yeah, that ain't happening, brother.
Eli's cheaper. Eli's cheaper.
Yeah.
I think Blake's gonna have to get a new address.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll see if they let him go.
Since I've given Murph so much credit for the UCF success, is the Giants kind of self-destruction kind of a coincidence with you visiting their training camp this year, Jeff?
I'm not going to rule it out. I visited Giants training camp 3 times. One was in 1992. They went 6-10, and Ray Hanley got fired. Terrible year. It's just absolutely horrendous. Then they hired Dan Reeves, who coaches the same players almost to a division title.
Yeah.
I think I had another one. Let's see. It was 1996. What did they do? What did they do that year? Oh yeah, that was another 6-10 year. So that was another gem.
Was that like early Jim Fossil year?
No, that was Dan Reeves' last year. Yeah, that was Jim Fossil.
Cannell like a rookie there? Danny Cannell, like rookie or second year?
Cannell was a let's see.
We had that stiff from like Duke or whatever.
Yeah,
Brown.
Cannell did play. Cannell did play.
Dave Brown.
Dave Brown was the regular starter. Yeah, no, Dave Brown actually started all 16 games. Cannell got in for 4 in garbage time, but it wasn't
and
until
they followed that with Kent Graham, guys.
Yeah. Well, they had like 2 or 3 stints of Kent Graham, all of which were really forgettable. With the following year, Murph, 97, the Giants went 10-5-1 in back of that was Fossil's first year. In back of one Danny Cannell, Eric Lopez, who started the last 10 games after they finally put Dave Brown out of his misery, and then that was the game where they in the playoffs they faced Minnesota, and Minnesota scored something like 15 points in the final 2 minutes of the game or something like that to win it in Giants Stadium, and the Giants blew 13 points in the last minute of the game. And the Giants blew it. No, I'm sorry, that was wrong too. 10 points in the last minute of the game. Either way, I just know that they gave up a lot of points in the last minute of the game. They gave up an onside kick, and it was just bad. But that's my 3. Yeah, and then this year I went to Giants training camp again, and this year's turning out to be again forgettable. Maybe I should just never go to Giant camp again.
I applaud them for putting Geno in and just acknowledging that they are tanking. Thank you very much.
Yeah. This is the equivalent to starting Adam Morrison basically in the final week of the season, right? I mean, we are waving the white flag up in here.
This has been another great episode of the Blue, Red, White, Black, and Gold Banneret podcast.
Yes.
I loved it. I loved the Giants deal there. That is
Blue,
phenomenal.
Black, and Gold Banneret podcast. Well, at least there's a lot of alliteration there. All right. So as we wrap up here, guys, where can people follow you? Start with you, Brian.
I am at spokes_Murphy on Twitter.
All right. Narek?
Eric Lopez Elo.
I am at Jeff_Sharon. We collectively are at UCF_Banneret. Don't forget, we will once again live blog the American Athletic Conference championship game this Saturday. Kickoff is at noon. We'll start about an hour before that. It'll be me and Brian. Again, you won't hear from Eric because he's doing important work for the conference's radio crew. But I'm sure we'll hear from him afterwards. Don't forget, you can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/blackandgoldbanneret, and of course at blackandgoldbanneret.com, where you can sign up for email updates, as well as our podcast, which you have just listened to. And you can subscribe to us on Google Play, iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and TuneIn. For Eric Lopez and Brian Murphy, I'm Jeff Sharon. Thank you so much for listening. Happy Championship Week. We'll see you on the live blog on Saturday. This has been the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.